Let me tell you something strange, beautiful, and wildly uncomfortable. After a spiritual awakening, you don't become mean, you don't become arrogant, you don't become too good for people, you become awake. At first, it doesn't feel spiritual, it feels irritating, confusing, almost rude. You wake up one day and it's like someone quietly turned up the brightness on reality without asking your permission. Colors look sharper, silence sounds louder, and people suddenly feel different. Not different like they changed overnight. Different like you finally took off a pair of blurry glasses you didn't know you were wearing for most of your life. You start noticing things you used to glide right past. The way someone smiles but their eyes are negotiating something. The way a joke lands just a little too cruel to be harmless. The way conversations loop around status, gossip, money, ego, and fear like a broken record nobody wants to admit is scratched. And you're standing there thinking, was it always like this? Or did I just wake up inside a very strange movie? That's the shock of awareness. It's not gentle. It doesn't come with soft music and angelic lighting. It comes with this internal jolt, like your soul just spilled cold water on your face and said, look, really look. You begin to see patterns instead of personalities, defense mechanisms instead of confidence, unhealed wounds pretending to be attitudes. And here's the wild part, you can't unsee it. You try. You go back into old conversations, old rooms, old friendships, hoping it will feel the same. Hoping the magic will come back. Hoping you can just shrink your awareness a little, just enough to fit back into the old version of your life, like a favorite hoodie that suddenly feels 2 sizes too small. But your mind won't cooperate. Someone complains for the 10th time about the same problem they refuse to change, and instead of nodding politely, something inside you whispers, this is a loop. Someone brags about something that's clearly covering up insecurity, and instead of being impressed, you feel this soft ache of compassion mixed with exhaustion. It's not judgment, it's clarity, and clarity is awkward. Because now you're aware of how much of human interaction is performance, how much is fear wearing makeup, how much is loneliness disguised as confidence. You start hearing what's under the words. And that's when the discomfort really kicks in. Because you realize, I used to talk like this, I used to think like this, I used to live like this. That's the part nobody warns you about. Awakening doesn't just show you other people's illusions. It shows you your own. It's like walking into a room and realizing you've been singing along to a song that's been wildly off-key your entire life, and everyone else is still singing it with full confidence. You're not superior. You're just awake. But awakening comes with grief. Grief for the innocence you lost. Grief for the version of you didn't see so much. Grief for the simplicity of believing everything was exactly what it looked like. And in that grief, irritation sneaks in. Not because people are bad, but because you can now see the gears turning behind the curtain, the manipulation, the avoidance, the unconsciousness. You don't feel angry at them. You feel tired of pretending not to notice, tired of playing along, tired of shrinking your awareness just to keep the peace. This is the shock of awareness. It's the moment your inner world grows faster than your outer world can keep up with. And it's not the end of your love for people. It's the end of your illusions about them and about yourself. And that moment, as uncomfortable, lonely, and disorienting as it feels, is the exact moment your life actually begins. It starts quietly. Nothing dramatic, no explosions, no big arguments, just a subtle feeling that something is off. You're sitting with people you've known for years, laughing at the same jokes, hearing the same stories, doing the same rituals, and suddenly it feels like you're wearing someone else's life. Like you showed up to your own past, you still care about them, you still love them, but the energy doesn't match anymore. It's like your inner world took a long, honest shower and came back fresh, light and clear, and now some relationships feel like walking back into a smoky room with stale air and sticky floors. You're not judging them. You're just breathing differently now. You notice how certain conversations leave you drained instead of energized, how certain people pull you back into versions of yourself you worked really hard to outgrow, how you laugh but it feels hollow, how you nod, but your soul isn't nodding with you, and that's when the guilt kicks in. What kind of person starts feeling disconnected from people who were there for them? Why do I feel irritated when they haven't done anything wrong? Why do I want space from people I used to feel so close to? Here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't change your personality. You changed your frequency. Your values shifted, your tolerance dropped, your self-respect got louder, and now your nervous system can't pretend anymore. You're outgrowing old energies, not because they're bad, not because you're better, but because you're no longer living from the same wounds. Some people bond through trauma, through gossip, through complaining, through mutual insecurity. And when you start healing, those bonds start dissolving. You realize how many friendships were built on distraction instead of depth, on routine instead of resonance, on comfort instead of connection. And suddenly you're like, wait, this is all I ever talk about. It feels cruel to admit. But your soul is craving honesty, stillness, meaning, growth. And some people are still craving drama, validation, chaos, and noise. Nobody's wrong, you're just no longer on the same road. And here's the part that hurts the most, you can't take them with you. You try. You drop hints, you share insights. You talk about growth and healing and self-awareness. And they look at you like you just joined a very polite cult. You realize something heavy, you're walking away from versions of life that can't walk with you anymore. And it feels like betrayal. But it's not, it's evolution. Just like you outgrew certain clothes, certain habits, certain dreams, you're outgrowing certain energies. And the body always knows first. The tight chest, the forced smile, the exhaustion after hanging out, that's your system saying, this is no longer home. And it doesn't mean you slam doors. It means you stop forcing them open. You stop chasing connection where alignment no longer exists. You stop explaining yourself to people who only know the old you. You let the distance happen naturally. And yes, it feels lonely. It feels like shedding skin without knowing what the new one looks like yet. But here's the quiet miracle: every time you honor that inner shift, you make space for people who speak your new language, people who don't drain you, people who don't need you to perform, people who meet you in presence instead of pain. Outgrowing old energies isn't rejection, it's self-respect in motion. It's your soul saying, thank you for getting me this far. But I'm not who I was when we started. And that's not cold, that's courage. At some point the noise falls away, not all at once, not dramatically, it just thins out. The group chats don't hit the same. The parties feel louder but emptier. The jokes feel recycled. The conversations feel like reruns of a show you've already outgrown. And you find yourself sitting alone more often. Not because no one invited you, but because something inside you quietly said, I'd rather be alone than be somewhere my soul doesn't fit anymore. That's when the loneliness starts, and not the romantic kind, not the poetic, candle-lit journaling with tea kind, the real kind. The kind where you look at your phone and realize you don't actually want to text anyone, but you don't want to be alone either. The kind where you walk into a room full of people and somehow feel more invisible than if you were by yourself. The kind where you think, did I do something wrong? Did I break myself? Why does it feel like I'm standing on a different planet than everyone else? This is the loneliness of truth. It doesn't come from being unloved. It comes from being misunderstood. You see things differently now. You feel things differently now. You value silence more than noise, depth more than drama, presence more than performance. And most people don't live there. So you stop talking as much, not because you're depressed, but because you're tired of explaining things people don't want to hear. You're tired of shrinking your insights into sound bites. Tired of pretending you care about conversations that don't touch anything real. Tired of watching people numb themselves and call it a lifestyle. You start choosing your words carefully. And then you start choosing silence, and silence at first feels like exile. You sit with your own thoughts and realize how much of your old social life was just a distraction from yourself. You realize how often you use people to avoid your own inner world. And now that your inner world is awake, it wants your attention. So it pulls you inward, away from crowds, away from chaos, away from surface level connection. And you think something is wrong with you. You Google things like, why do I feel disconnected from everyone? Why do I want to be alone after spiritual awakening? You wonder if you're becoming antisocial, cold, arrogant. You're not. You're just in the in-between. The place between who you were and who you're becoming. The place where your old life no longer fits and your new life hasn't fully formed yet. It's a quiet desert, and deserts are lonely. But deserts are also where vision happens, where ego dies, where your identity gets stripped down to the bones. This loneliness isn't punishment, it's initiation. It's life pulling you into solitude so you can meet yourself without the noise of other people's expectations, opinions, and projections. It's where you learn the difference between being alone and being lonely. At first you feel abandoned. Then, slowly something strange happens. You start enjoying your own company. You start hearing your own thoughts clearly, feeling your own emotions without buffering them through other people, trusting your own intuition. And one day you realize you're not lonely anymore. You're peaceful. And that's when your energy changes. You stop chasing connection. You stop needing approval. You stop begging to be understood. And that's the exact moment the right people start showing up. Not crowds, not noise, but a few souls who see you, who speak your language, who don't make you explain your depth. And suddenly you understand this loneliness wasn't a mistake. It was a bridge. From who you were to who you really are. Something subtle but radical happens after you wake up. You stop laughing when things aren't funny. You stop agreeing when you don't agree. You stop nodding just to keep the peace. And at first you think, wow, I'm becoming kind of intense. But you're not becoming intense. You're becoming honest. You start noticing how much of everyday life is theater. How people wear personalities like outfits. How they shift depending on who's in the room. How kindness is sometimes just strategy in a soft sweater. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start feeling physically uncomfortable when someone is being fake. When they're fishing for compliments, when they're pretending not to care but clearly desperate to be chosen. It's not that you hate them, it's that your nervous system is allergic to dishonesty now. You used to do it too. You used to laugh too loud, agree too fast, soften your truth, hide your edges. You were trying to be liked, trying to be safe, trying to belong. But awakening burns that out of you. Not gently, it rips the mask off and hands it back to you like, here, you don't need this anymore. And suddenly you're standing in rooms full of people who are still wearing their smiling, polite smiles, talking safe talk, avoiding anything real. And you're just standing there thinking, how did I ever live like this? You start rejecting what you used to tolerate. You can't play dumb anymore. You can't pretend not to notice manipulation. You can't unfeel when someone's words and energy don't match. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because your authenticity shines a very unflattering light. Not because you're judging them, but because you're not playing along anymore. You're not laughing at the cruel joke. You're not joining the gossip circle. You're not nodding at the subtle insult disguised as humor. You don't confront, you don't preach, you just don't participate. And that quiet refusal is louder than any argument. Some people start pulling away. Some get defensive. Some suddenly say, you've changed it and they're right, you did. You stopped betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. You stopped being a background character in your own life. You chose authenticity over approval. And that choice comes with a cost. You lose access to spaces built on ego, games, and performance. You stop being invited into conversations that require you to lie to yourself. You stop being welcome in rooms where your realness disrupts the illusion. And at first it hurts. It feels like rejection. But it's actually alignment. You're no longer vibrating at the frequency of manipulation, drama, or people-pleasing. So those worlds can't hold you anymore. Here's the strange part. You don't become cruel. You become cleaner. You become simpler. You say what you mean. You mean what you say. You don't undersell. You don't need to control how people see you anymore. And that terrifies people who live inside masks. Because your presence silently says, you could be real too. And most people aren't ready for that. So they call you cold, arrogant, too serious, too deep. But what they really mean is, you're not playing the game I need you to play. And that's okay, you weren't born to be liked by everyone, you were born to be real, and real people don't fit into fake systems. So yes, you start rejecting masks, you start rejecting manipulation, you start rejecting performative kindness. Not because you're better than anyone, but because your soul finally got tired of lying. And once your soul tells the truth, there is no going back to pretending. Something beautiful and brutal happens when you wake up. Your heart gets bigger, and your tolerance gets smaller. You start feeling more compassion for people. And at the same time, less willingness to sit in their chaos. That contradiction messes with your head. Because you genuinely care, you genuinely understand, you genuinely see their pain, their wounds, their fears, and yet you don't want to be around them anymore. So you think, am I becoming heartless? Why do I feel love for them? But also this deep need to stay away? Here's the truth nobody tells you: you're learning compassion without attachment. Before your awakening, love meant endurance. It meant staying, fixing, explaining, absorbing, tolerating things that quietly broke you. You confused loyalty with self-abandonment. You thought being a good person meant being endlessly available, endlessly understanding, endlessly forgiving, even when it cost you your peace, your energy, your dignity. But awakening rewires that. You start seeing how often your kindness was actually fear. Fear of being alone, fear of conflict, fear of being disliked, fear of being seen as selfish. You weren't loving people, you were managing them. You were managing their moods, their needs, their expectations, their emotional instability, and calling it compassion. Now something in you says, no more, not angrily, not bitterly, just clearly. You can sit with someone in pain and not try to save them. You can listen without taking responsibility. You can understand without excusing behavior that harms you. That's a whole new level of love. You start seeing that some people don't actually want healing. They want familiarity. They want someone to enable their patterns. Someone to validate their victim story. Someone to carry emotional weight they refuse to carry themselves. And you used to volunteer for that role. You were the emotional sponge. The fixer, the therapist friend, the safe dumping ground you needed, which felt like love, but it was codependence wearing a halo. Awakening strips that illusion away. So now when someone spirals into drama, manipulation, or endless complaining, you don't jump in anymore. You don't lecture, you don't judge, you just don't enter the chaos. And that feels cruel at first, because you still feel their pain. You just refuse to drown in it. You start choosing distance instead of arguments, silence instead of saving, boundaries instead of burnout. And people don't like that version of you. They say you've changed, they say you're cold, they say you don't care like you used to. What they really mean is, you don't bleed for me anymore, and they're right. You don't, not because you stopped loving, but because you started loving yourself too. You realize something sacred: you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You can wish someone healing without being their battlefield. You can hope they grow without staying close enough to be hurt by their refusal to grow. That's compassion without attachment. It's love with a spine. It's empathy with boundaries. It's kindness that doesn't betray your nervous system. And here's the quiet miracle: the more you honor your own peace, the more genuine your love becomes. No resentment, no martyrdom, no silent rage, just clean, honest care. You stop trying to rescue people who keep choosing drowning. You stop arguing with people who are addicted to being right. You stop explaining yourself to people who only listen to respond, not to understand. And instead, you bless them from a distance. You say internally, I see you, I love you, and I'm not coming with you into that darkness anymore. That's not abandonment. That's evolution. That's what happens when your heart grows wise. You don't close your heart, you protect it. So now you didn't become less loving. You became more conscious about where your love goes. And that changes everything. At the end of all of this, the awareness, the loneliness, the outgrowing the boundaries, the awkward silence in rooms you used to belong in, something quiet and holy happens. You come home to yourself, not in a fireworks way, not in a movie montage way, in a soft, ordinary, almost boring way. You wake up one morning and realize you're not at war with yourself anymore. You're not trying so hard to be impressive. You're not editing your personality in real time. You're not rehearsing conversations in your head before you speak. You're just here. And it feels unfamiliar at first, because for most of your life, you were a performance. You were the agreeable one, the funny one, the strong one, the helpful one, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who didn't ask for too much. You were a college of other people's expectations, and you called that me. But awakening pulls all of that apart. It takes away your audience. It takes away your scripts. It takes away your need to be understood. And at first, that feels like death. Because who are you if you're not the version everyone recognizes? Who are you if you're not needed, liked, approved of, validated? You feel naked, unimpressive, small, and then something wild happens. You start liking yourself. Not in a narcissistic way. Not in a look at me way. In a peaceful way. You enjoy your own company. You trust your own instincts. You stop second-guessing every decision like the universe is grading you. You start making choices based on how they feel in your body, not how they look to other people. You start saying no without a 10-paragraph apology. You start resting without guilt. You start walking away without speeches. And the world calls that selfish. But your soul calls that sanity. You realize something that changes everything. You were never meant to be everyone's cup of tea. You were meant to be your own home. So when people drift away now, it hurts, but it doesn't destroy you. When you're misunderstood, it stings, but it doesn't collapse your identity. When someone doesn't choose you, you don't spiral into worthlessness. Because you already chose yourself. And that choice rewires your entire nervous system. You stop chasing people who don't meet you halfway. You stop auditioning for love. You stop explaining your depth to people who live on the surface. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And here's the part nobody talks about. You don't become bitter. You become softer, not weaker. Softer, you stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to win arguments. You stop needing to be right. You listen more. You react less. You forgive faster. Not because you're above anyone, but because you're finally at peace with yourself. And when you're at peace with yourself, other people's chaos doesn't feel personal anymore. Their rejection doesn't feel like a verdict. Their cruelty doesn't feel like a reflection of your worth. Their misunderstanding doesn't feel like an emergency. It just feels like information. You start moving through the world lighter, less defensive, less desperate, less hungry for approval. And people notice. They can't always name what changed about you. They just know you're different, calmer, clearer, harder to manipulate, harder to provoke. And some people won't like that. They preferred the old you, the accessible you, the bend over backwards you, the please don't leave me you. But that version of you was exhausted. That version of you was bleeding quietly. That version of you was living in survival mode. You didn't lose people. You lost roles you were never meant to play forever. And here's the quiet final truth. You're not becoming bitter. You're becoming real. You're not disconnecting from humanity. You're reconnecting to your humanity. You're not hardening, you're grounding. You're not isolating. You're integrating. You're finally living as one whole person instead of 10 fragmented ones trying to be loved. And once you come home to yourself, you never again tolerate a life that requires you to abandon who you are. That's not arrogance. That's awakening. And that is freedom. If you got even 1% motivation from this video, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel Unstoppable Growth so that I can be encouraged.